So 10.30 kelas Bismar
Tak sir, saya dah cakap dengan Madam Ma dah. Yang saya attend kelas sir, Madam Ma cakap okey je.
Okay, alright. Alright, so sebelum kita mula topik-topik sebelum ni okey tak?
Okey sir setakat ni. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so kamu tinggal kalau ikut sini presentation je lah kan?
Mm-mm.
Writing and presentation. Ada soalan apa-apa tak tentang dia punya ni kerja ni?
Setakat ni tak ada sir.
Ni akan sampai minggu depan ni.
Oh ya?
Tak ada. Minggu ke-13.
Oh, okey.
Okay, untuk assignment ni, kamu kena buat satu presentation recorded dengan writing lah. So apa yang kamu kena present, kamu kena cerita daripada topik kita yang mula sekali. Jadi kalau kata kita tengok tajuk topik kita belajar je mana scheme of work ni. Okay, kalau kita tengok topik ni, topik-topik ni dia boleh bagi pada 3 bahagian tau. The first topic, okay, motor skill, abilities. Chapter 1 ni, chapter 2, chapter 3, attention and memory. Lepas tu, okay, sampai chapter 3 ni, this is actually the first part of our code, which is regarding motor control. Jadi daripada 3 topik tu, dia cerita macam mana kita, how our mind control motor skill. 3 chapter first. And then when you go to chapter 4, motor skill learning, chapter 5, instruction and feedback. And then we have, okay, tu dia. 4 dengan 5 is our second part, which is regarding motor learning. Jadi motor control, motor learning. Okay, motor control is how we control the movement. Motor learning, how we acquire the movement. And then chapter 6, okay, chapter 6 ni is regarding practice. Jadi 3 bahagian tu, if you take a look at your presentation and report ni, dia benda yang sama. Means in the introduction, you need to talk about motor control. First you choose a sport lah. Contoh kamu nak buat bola sepak kan. So you select a sport and discuss the motor skill category. Okay, yang ni chapter 1. Taxonomy. Okay, taxonomy dia. One dimension dengan two dimension. So the first chapter ni you talk about how we control movement dia. Talk about division of movement. Talk about some laws. Talk about neuromotor basis. Benda-benda yang itu kamu cerita dekat chapter 1 lah, dekat section 1. And then masuk kepada section 2, we talk about motor learning pula. How we acquire skill tu. Jadi kita daripada topik-topik yang kita belajar tu, you need to talk about stages of learning. Dia ni contoh macam kamu sekarang, kamu nak jadikan diri sendiri model ke, nak ambil orang lain, it's up to you. So you talk about, okay, now where are you? Beginner ke, expert ke, and then explain about progress from the start up until today. Maybe you take one skill in soccer, let's say free kick. So dulu free kick tegak je, sekarang free kick dah boleh melencong. Lepas tu dah boleh ada accuracy. So we talk about the progress. And then you talk about the progress tu, you talk about you justify that based on the expertise continuum paradigm tu. 10,000 jam ataupun 10 tahun. Why expert need to have this kind or these hours of practice in order to gain all those experience. Benda-benda tu kamu cerita dekat bahagian section 2. And the topic that we are going to learn from today is the third part. Basically, topik yang minggu lepas still lagi motor learning. Topik yang minggu ni is the third part, which is practice. Now, you are going to explain about the kind of practice. Okay, how can practice enhance or progress the performance? And then you're going to make some demonstration, record a video about demonstration, include in the video what is the difference between instruction and feedback in order to help athletes learn new skill. Ni 3 benda ni kamu kena cerita. In other words, basically you need to explain about how motor control and learning help athletes to become expert. Itulah assignment kamu. Okay, so assignment ni bukanlah assignment yang mudah, tapi It is not hard, but dia ada banyak bahagian. So it takes a bit of time. Okay? And
Okay, sir.
then, bila nak kena submit? Saya rasa macam minggu depan. Tu submission. Minggu 13. Boleh? So kalau
Boleh, sir.
minggu 13 ni sangkut minggu 14 pun quite okay lah kau seorang je pun.
Boleh, sir.
Minggu 14 lah, minggu 14. We take final submission on week 14. So you need to submit dua benda lah. One is report. Okay, report will serve 30% of your carry marks. And then presentation. So presentation, recorded presentation, upload dekat YouTube or whatsoever, and then just submit dia punya link saja. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Kalau ada soalan nanti tanya saya along the way
Okay.
Right, so today let's go for this topic. The first part. Okay. So in the third section of motor control and learning, we are going to discuss about practice. Saya takkan cakap lah in order to have increment in speed, you need to practice speed. Tu bukan subjek motor control learning. So here we are going to talk about properties of the practice. Practice ni macam mana kita nak bagi orang tu. Kalau orang ni masalah macam A, practice macam mana kita nak bagi. Macam mana kita nak pastikan orang ni gain the most experience from the practice. Itu yang kita akan belajar dekat dalam motor control and learning lah. So the first topic under practice region or section is about practice variability and specificity. Okay. If we define these two things, it is a total contrast. Variability means we have variance lah, but when we talk about specificity means specific satu. Macam mana kita nak practice variance but satu. So these two things is totally in contrast with one another. Tapi towards the end of this topic nanti kamu akan nampak sebenarnya kita kena ada dua-dua. These two things is complementing one another in order to gain the most effect of practice. Okay. Concept of this chapter is about variability of practice experiences is important. Means in a practice, in order to become expert, 10,000 hours or 10 years tadi tu, you need experience. And this experience, you need it in vast, banyak, besar. You need to experience from multiple point of view. So in order to have all those, we need to have variance in practice. Means kita tak boleh nak practice satu benda je. Example, kamu main bola. Sometime when you play football, when you play soccer, you may have a competition in the evening. Sometime in the morning. Some other times at night. These three different contexts represent different outcome, represent different character. So if you just only practice playing soccer in the evening, there are tendency for you to unable to excel if the competition will be played at night or the competition will be played in the morning, since the surrounding is different. Practice tadi tak panas, main pagi panas, tak boleh perform. Practice tadi selesa, main malam sejuk, krem. Tu maksud dia. So we need to experience all of those in order to gain the most effect of the practice. Tu maksud practice variability. That is the concept of it. Okay. So practice variability refer to the variation of movement and context. So means here, when we talk about practice variability, we need to we need to practice different skill variation. Okay. For example, dalam bola, passing, macam apa jenis passing yang ada kat dalam bola yang kau selalu pakai? What kind of passing?
Passing,
Straight pass, lagi apa?
straight pass, short pass,
long pass, crossing. Okay, lagi? Benda yang saya tak tahu?
True ball.
True ball, tu boleh kan? Okay, lagi?
Itu je sir.
Itu je?
Itu yang macam basic je. Yang complicated tu.
Kalau kita increase the level, tak nak basic, nak yang expert punya level.
Tak tahu macam mana nak cakap lah sir.
Okay, tak tahu macam mana nak cakap. Means declarative knowledge out of order.
Yes.
Procedural, mantap. Pasal kamu boleh buat dia kan? Okay. Means here, when we talk about practice variability, skill variation that will be required in test condition. So, in a real soccer match, kita tak boleh nak determine tau. Kita akan pakai short pass je kat game ni, tak boleh kan. So sometimes short
Betul
pass kena
sir.
pakai, sometimes long pass kena pakai, sometimes cross kena pakai, sometimes nak oleh orang. So
Betul
there
sir.
are multiple variation. Short pass pula, it can be a straight a front short pass, it can be side short pass. So there are a lot of variation. Banyak pecahan. So in practice variability, it said that in order to gain the most outcome, you required to train for all those variant. Ni maksud yang pertama tadi. Skill variant that will be required in test. Test ni competition lah. Jadi kita tak tahu. Mungkin competition A, kita banyak buat long pass. Competition B, kita banyak buat short pass. Now, competition C, nak passing tapi dalam hujan. There are differences. And these are the experience that an expert try to have from those 10,000 hours. Dia cuba untuk practice, dia cuba untuk anticipate and practice all those variant that may present during test condition. Jadi ini konsep pertama variability. We need to practice the skill variation. Number two, we need to practice in multiple physical context. Macam yang tadi lah, main petang, main malam, main tengah hari, playing soccer, on the natural field, playing soccer on the astroturf, on the synthetic field. All of those will give effect. So to be an expert, you need to have experience on all of that. Jadi, bila dalam test condition, you happen to see the same condition, dia dah tak jadi masalah because we have an idea on how to conduct that. And number three, situation. Okay, situation in which the skill occurs. Okay, like my sport. My competition is outdoor, same as yours. So sometimes when we in the test condition, it is windy. Sometimes when we are in the test condition, it is raining. Sometimes we had a mild storm. Sometimes we had a very chilly condition, sejuk, and sometimes we had a very hot and humid condition. So in practice, we need to actually feel all of those condition. Ni maksud situation dia. Sometimes we are going to play in a very calm surrounding. Sometimes we are going to play in quite tense surroundings. Sometimes there are noise, a lot of noise. So in practice, we need to have all of these variants. Mungkin kita tak dapat dekat practice A, tapi bila kita pergi test match, kita dapat experience itu. That is pun part of practice. Okay. So tiga-tiga ni ada juga satu lagi kita boleh masukkan, which is regarding cognitive and also psychological aspect. So in practice variability, we also need to train for those. Cognitively means the thinking process. Sometimes if you are the captain of the team, so you need to make some calculation in order to bring the team forward. Tapi tak pernah practice pun jadi team captain. Tiba-tiba masa kejadian team captain kena parap, kau lah orang kedua nah change team captain. So you are going to face a bit of problem in order to manage the team because you never trained to do so. To cognitive. Okay, and then in terms of psychological, it's about mind and your heart, feelings. So in practice, you need to train for that too. Okay. Contoh dia. Pernah tak kamu jumpa satu lawan, dia punya lawan tu mungkin quite normal, but psychologically dia sangat-sangat annoying. Maksudnya kuat menganjing and do all of those things that in order for to cloud your judgment. So dia nak buat kau rasa marah, lepas tu kau tak boleh nak main. Pernah tak jumpa team macam ni?
Uish, banyak kali sir.
Macam mana kau handle?
Saya tak layan je. Saya diri sendiri saya cakap biar dia saya buat.
Ada tak kawan-kawan yang termakan hasut?
Mesti ada je. Mesti ada. Itu
Kenapa?
boleh dijaskan tu juga performance tak kan?
Betul lah. Memanglah dia boleh. Basically, if you are conditioned enough tapi psychologically tak condition, sama aja boleh buat. Tapi bila sampai situ rasa, especially when you feel too much aroused, you feel too much temper, you're going to lose that temper, you can't control your body anymore.
Betul,
Jadi tadi
betul tu.
tadi kita boleh sepak katalah 1 sampai 10 kita boleh sepak 10, dia kena marah sangat. Konon-konon niat nak buat 11 tapi at the end jadi 6 7 je.
Betul
Tak
tu.
accurate. That is part of the practice. Kena masuk juga dekat bahagian practice variability ni. For my match kan, most of our match is actually quite individual match lah. Jadi there are opponent yang kita orang pun boleh cakap quite experienced opponent. Kita boleh tengok tau, orang ni yang ini susah nak makan, yang ini senang nak makan, yang ini cepat koyak. So the strategy will be different. Same goes as your own self. Jadi kamu pun kena tahu, if you can apply that kind of strategy to your opponent can do so to you. Means you need to practice in order to overcome all of that. Macam kamu cakap, saya buat tak tahu je lah. Yes, you can do that. But others, kenapa kawan kamu tak boleh? Kenapa dia panas sangat dengan tim lawan ni? Kerja nak bertumbuk kan. So, bila dia masuk level tu, dia perform tak?
Tak je.
Ha.
Tak perform je.
Kenapa dia jadi macam tu? Simply because he does not have the experience regarding that particular condition. Experience nak dapat kat mana? Practice. Mungkin kamu dah lama main, dah lama pergi persetan lah sama dia. Dia saja je cakap tu, kawan yang kat sebelah, kau tunggu. Sekejap lagi aku dapat peluang, aku parap kau balik. Contoh lah kan. Jadi niat dia sekarang is not to play, but to actually injure the defense or the attackers of your opponent. Dah jadi lain dah. Tak
Sure.
main objektif. Yep.
Tapi kalau banyak experience pun dia macam tu juga rasa, macam mana tu tu?
Katuk kepala dekat dinding. Antuk kepala dekat dinding. Okay, if you say that he is experienced enough, katalah lepas ni kamu bawa team ke apa kan, you are going to see, okay, player saya ni memang dah expert dah tapi dia tak boleh nak tahan psychological. So the answer is simple. Dia train tak psychological dia?
Oh, train psychological mungkin tak saya, mungkin tak.
Yes, physical is yes. But psychologically, because when we talk about athlete performance, dua benda ni berkait rapat. Whether if you have your physical being developed, psychological out, tak boleh perform juga. If psychologically you are tough, tapi physical lembik, tak boleh perform juga.
Betul saya, betul.
You need to have all those things, all those two. So that need to be included in the practice variability. Practice means perform during condition yang aman, perform during condition yang hectic, how you want to block all of those in order to not make it come into your mind. Tu kena practice, and that is part of practice variability. Jadi maksudnya bila hari condition, you're going to notice this tau. Bila hari practice, usually you can perform, but bila hari competition, some of you can perform, some of you can't. Jadi yang tak boleh ni, this is actually the problem. Because he always, maybe selalu orang macam ni, dia ni saya panggil jago kampung lah. In practice, excel gila. Tapi competition, ke laut. Simply because dekat practice, dia dah ada satu feeling yakin. But that yakin is not in competition. Why is being like that is because psychologically dia tak train for that. Jadi dia takut. Sebenarnya dia takut, tapi since duduk kat rumah sendiri kan, takkan nak takut dengan adik-adik. Macam tu lah. Keluar pada rumah, ada abang-abang yang lebih besar pada dia. So macam mana kita nak overcome that one? Dia kena condition, dia kena practice dengan condition macam ni. One of it is by having a lot of friendly matches. Kita kena bagi dia. Itu kita train dia in term of psychologically and cognitively dia. So that dia akan dapat experience tu. Jadi bila dia pergi competition yang besar, dia tahu lah, ini macam level-level aku punya friendly match je. So it's okay. Pasal dia dah ada that feeling. So in other words, feeling need to have the variation tu. Cognitively, minds need to have the variation tu. Psychologically need to have the variation, not just physical. Ni practice variability. We need to have a variance in physical, mental and also psychological. All of those need to have variance. Variance macam mana? Macam tiga-tiga dia. Need to have variance in terms of skill, need to have variance in terms of physical, need to have variance in terms of situation. Okay. Right. Ni apa? Apa ni? Front, back. Okay, ni dia bagi contoh. Kita ada 4 variation of practice where we have constant practice. Okay. Constant practice ni free throw shooting from the free throw line only. Satu tempat je. Berdiri dekat free throw basketball tu, dia throw. Sampai berapa kali ni? 40 throw. Okay, 40 throw. And then, group nombor 2, we have variable practice, front and back. Means, they are going to conduct practice dekat 2 kaki belakang free throw line, 2 kaki depan free throw line. Jadi ada 40 throw, 20 depan, 20 belakang. Dia tak practice dekat actual free throw. But for variable practice, okay, we have 2 variable practice. One is free throw combination, and then another one is random. Okay, so untuk combination, free throw shot from 2 feet in front and 2 feet behind the free throw line, randomly assigned in each practice session. Okay, and number 4, free throw shot from the elbow to the left and to the right of the key and from the top of the key randomly assigned. Okay, dua ni, okay, beza dengan yang nombor 2. Okay, combination dengan random ni beza dengan front and back. Front and back means one session we go with only one part. 2 meter depan je. And then another session 2 meter belakang. But for combination dengan random, combination ni, dia ada free throw depan, free throw belakang, and then free throw line. Maksudnya dia akan pergi 3 tempat. Okay, random pula, dia akan practice semua tempat, but randomly. Maksudnya ikut coach, ini pergi depan, ini pergi belakang, ini pergi depan, ini pergi belakang. So, dia tak boleh nak detect which dia akan buat dulu. And based on that, the result is actually more towards free throw combination. Tapi yang benarnya dia nak tunjuk sini ni 2 lah. We can see that if you have combination, 1, and number 2, if you have randomized trial. Okay, maksudnya we cannot predict which side the coach is going to assign to you. You are going to have much better outcome compared to if you train only one place or if you train in block. This is what we call a block train lah. Sesi 1, contoh bola kan, sesi 1 buat free kick je. Sesi 2 buat free throw pula, throw in je. Sesi 3 buat passing je. So in one session, let's say for one session is 30 minutes, you do the same thing over and over and over. Tapi untuk VC and VR ni, dalam 30 minit, okay, kalau kata kita ada 3 condition, dia akan buat 3-3. 10 minit A, 10 minit B, 10 minit C. Or dia akan buat A, B, C. Or dia akan buat A, C, B, B, C, A according to the coach. To randomize. Okay, konsep ini kita akan tengok dekat topik lepas ni. Kenapa randomize give you much effect compared to block. Okay, jadi cuma dekat sini yang I need you to have is, in practice, it is better to have variation. Satu variation, not only focus on one particular skill. And number 2, after you have the variation, it is better for you to have, for you not to have the series. Instead, go for random. Itu dua benda. Okay, yang tu kejap lagi kita tengok konsep ni. Right. Future performance benefit research evidence show that more practice variability is better for learning and performance. Lagi banyak variation, lagi bagus. Variation ni bukan jumble up tadi. Variation ni maksudnya practice passing, we go for all anticipated situation. Kita mungkin ada passing straight, kita mungkin ada passing to the side, kita mungkin ada passing diagonal, angle passing. Kita mungkin ada passing laju, kita mungkin ada passing perlahan. The more you can anticipate about the skill that needed, is better. Okay, mungkin coach, unexperienced coach, dia practice 3-4 variation je. But experienced coach, dia akan practice mungkin lebih daripada 4, 10, 15. Because based on experience, he know that this kind of passing is needed in order to excel. Itu maksud dia. Okay, research show that the more practice variability is much better. Alright. And then, how to implement practice variability? Okay. In order for you to implement what kind of practice is needed, first you need to assess character of the physical context and skill characteristic. Vary this character according to the type of the skill. Practice condition to varied for closed skill. Practice condition to varied for open skill. Macam mana kita nak implement practice variability? First and foremost, this is not a problem for you. You need to know the sport. Itu je jawapan dia. You need to know the sport. Sukan saya begini. Like I said, my sport being played outdoor, physical context. And then, it can be played in a windy condition. It can be played in a rain condition. It can be played in a chill condition. It can be played in a very hot and sunny condition. It can be played indoor. It can be played outdoors. It can be on the field. It can be on a track. It can be on a beach. So I have a lot of variation. By knowing all of that variation, and then only you can plan for variability. Okay, so our competition. Next one, you need to know your competition. Okay, saya akan mewakili Karisma. So saya akan bermain di padang UiTM Shah Alam. Padang UiTM Shah Alam ialah padang rumput natural. So and then our competition is going to be held from 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. So petang bawa ke malam. And based on weather forecast, you know that UiTM Shah Alam is in quite hot and humid condition. Tu kamu dah tahu semua ciri-ciri yang kamu akan dapat. Based on that, plan your practice. So dah tahu main petang. So your practice need to be petang. Need to be malam. So pakaian macam mana yang diperlukan. Water consumption yang macam mana. All of that can be planned because you already know practice condition. You already assess the character of physical context and the skill needed in order to excel in that particular tournament. Barulah kamu boleh plan practice apa yang kamu nak buat based on condition yang kamu ada tadi. And this is how to implement practice variability. Know your sport, know your surrounding, know your skill, choose. Okay, choose the skill that going to be needed during the test and practice. To practice variability. Okay, ni contoh. Okay, this is some of the example. Golf shot using a 7 iron. The goal is to successfully make shot with the 7 iron during a golf match. Ini objektif dia lah. Maksudnya game kali ni dia nak main pakai iron 7 je. Jadi dia kenalah practice pakai iron 7 dekat shot yang berbeza-beza. Because dia dah limitkan satu. Contohlah macam tu kan. Apa lagi kita ada dekat sini? Regulatory condition that remain constant. 7 iron, golf ball. Regulatory condition that can vary. So they make assessment. Okay. This is some of the assessment being made by an athletes or coaches. Goal for the shot. Distance required. So the distance is going to be different. Location. Dekat atas green ke, dekat atas fairway ke, dekat atas rough tepi ke, dekat dalam bunker ke. So all of those in real required different club. But since you use only one club size, you need to practice on those different surfaces. It going to give some different effect. Jadi bila kamu ada idea macam tu, you go for this kind of practice. Now try to imagine, kamu masuk satu competition and suddenly you lost all of your club cannot be used except for one, 7 iron. Okay, except for one. Jadi bola masuk dekat dalam bunker. Kamu dah selalu practice pakai 7 iron, keluarkan bola dalam bunker. Soalan saya, is it a problem for you to repeat the same action? Susah ke nak keluarkan bola dalam bunker? Compare to opponent kamu yang dalam condition yang sama tapi tak pernah pun keluarkan bola daripada bunker selain menggunakan sand pitch. Sekarang ada 7 iron je. Kamu dengan opponent kamu, siapa yang lagi ada peluang lebih baik untuk keluarkan bola tu daripada dalam bunker? Is it you or is it your opponent?
Inilah kita, sir.
Itulah practice variability. Okay, that is what practice variability give you. So, you need to train. Katalah macam golf, ada banyak iron, ada wood. Dia boleh je nak practice guna satu iron dekat semua condition. So that if the real condition happen to be so, dia tahu macam mana nak overcome. Oh, kalau kat sand, aku punya angle kena macam ni. Kalau aku pakai 7 iron, bola boleh keluar. Okay, dia kena buka sikit club dia punya iron club. Tapi kalau dia pakai sand pitch, iron club tu dah memang terbuka dah. Jadi sekarang tak ada sand pitch. That is what practice variability. So you try to anticipate what is going to happen and practice that condition. Macam saya pula, if what I'm always do is something like this. In a high level competition, kita akan ada dua major apa kita nak cakap acara. Okay, we have two different condition. Satu, it is known as qualification round, or dulu-dulu nama dia FITA round. Okay, where you shoot on your own. Shoot je ke target tu, collect markah. Shoot, collect markah. Shoot, collect markah. Okay, if you have malfunction during this phase, qualification round, kita boleh dapat time out and repair. Tak kisahlah time out tu setengah jam ke sejam ke, you can have that, repair your equipment, and then if the competition had ended, kamu akan shoot seorang-seorang. Kalau kamu repair tu sekejap, kamu akan skip satu round. Maksudnya orang lain dah round kelima, kamu baru round keempat. And you are going to top up that round. Okay, habis je qualification round, we go to elimination or final round, where you are going to compete one another. Kamu dekat kiri, lawan dekat kanan, berdepan. Dua-dua tembak target yang sama. Okay, in this round, if you have malfunction, your only choice is to grab any other bow yang ada and shot within the stipulated time. There are no time out. If you take time out, kalah terus round tu. Okay, so what we always do is, contoh dalam satu team tu ada 4 orang, kita main individu. Kadang-kadang jadual individu ni tak sama. Mungkin saya main pagi, kawan saya main petang. Dia main petang, mungkin 2 orang. Kau shoot round first, dia akan shoot later. So dia punya sequence tak sama. So we are going to be we are going to have a partner, and we need to train with that partner equipment, so that if yours is fail, you have backup. Okay, memang totally haywire lah. Kamu punya mungkin adjuster 10, dia adjuster 8. Kamu punya mungkin 30 pound, dia punya 28. So there are difference. So we try to anticipate this difference. We try to practice during practice session, so that if an actual condition happen, we know what compensation we need to do, to conduct, in order to get our arrow as similar as before. Ini practice variation. So variation is just not towards the skill, but towards the condition. Okay, dapat?
Dapat, sir, dapat.
Okay, ini jawapan untuk soalan tadi. Macam mana kita nak setkan kita punya practice? Okay, the best way to organize practice variability. Nampak tu, jadi cerita block random dengan Siri. The best way to organize practice variability. Kita memang nak practice variability ni, tapi gaya mana? You need to determine contextual interference effect. Okay, nama dia ni kita boleh panggil sebagai CI effect, contextual interference effect. Okay, nama kampung dia yang saya selalu bagi dekat CI effect is cognitive effort. Okay, contextual interference effect referring to cognitive effort. Fikir. Okay, berfikir. So if cognitive effort is high, maksudnya you keep on using your mind to think, we are going to say that that particular practice had a high contextual interference effect. Maksudnya kalau CI ni tinggi, you need to think a lot. Tapi kalau perbuatan kamu CI dia rendah, means that it become autonomous. You don't need to think. So in the concept of learning, we need to keep on using our mind. We need to keep on make our cognitive working. As long as the cognitive is working, you are going to make modification towards your GMP. You are going to make new GMP. Tapi kalau cognitively tak bergerak, means kita buat benda yang sama autonomously, we are not going to create something. We are not going to polish GMP. Dia akan load the GMP lama and you execute. Dia akan load the GMP lama, you akan execute. You are going to notice something like this. If you train dribble, if you start training dribble, hari ni kali pertama kamu train dribble, you are going to think a bit. Oh, lepas ni kaki aku kat mana? Aku kena sepak bola kuat mana in order to fulfill or finish up the course. Tapi cuba bayangkan, now is the mark of 1 hour you do dribble practice. Dah sejam dah kamu buat dribble practice. Sampai level tu kamu dah tak payah fikir dah. Letak je kaki dah tahu bola tu berhenti kat mana. Betul tak?
Betul Zah.
Okay.
Betul.
Bila sampai yang later tu, contextual interference dia dah rendah. Tapi masa awal tadi, ada contextual interference. So, in the, if we try to organize practice variation, we need to actually have high CI effect. So, selagi CI effect dia tinggi, you are going to gain a lot of knowledge. You are going to polish up a lot of GMP in order to make it better and better. Jadi kita kena pastikan CI effect dia tinggi. Macam mana nak pastikan CI effect tinggi? Make sure the practice is challenging enough. Challenge apa? Cognitive. Challenging your cognitive. Means you don't need to have a pattern. Try to avoid pattern. Jadi in order to okay, ni kita tengok definition dia dulu. Okay. Contextual interference or CI, okay, the memory and performance disruption that result from performing variation of a skill within the context of practice. Contextual interference effect occur when higher amount of contextual interference are involved in practice than lower amount. Means that in order to get contextual interference, we need to keep on using our cognitive effort. We need to keep on using your brain. Bukan buat benda autonomous. So, they always give example in term of benda macam ni. How we define practice. How we put the practice session. Okay. Let's say we have 5 days of practice. Isnin sampai Jumaat. Okay. And every single day, we are going to practice for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. For 30 minutes. For block practice, 30 minit tu, setiap hari, dia hanya buat satu je jenis, serve. Okay, this is actually volleyball serve. Jadi dia buat satu je. Kalau block practice. Hari Senin, overhand dia buat. Hari Selasa, over lagi. Hari Rabu, under je. Hari Khamis pun under. Hari Senin, Selasa, Rabu, Khamis. Jumaat, baru buat side. Sabtu, baru buat side. But, every single day, dia hanya buat satu saja. So, at the first 5 minutes, you are going to get contextual interference. And for the rest of 25 minutes, kamu takkan dapat dah lagi apa-apa effect contextual interference. Because, you do the thing routinely. Routine practice does not invoke a lot of CI effect. Jadi bila CI effect tak banyak, you don't have much in your mind. You don't have a modification towards the GMP. GMP will stay similar. Kenapa? Pasal kita dah tak payah nak berfikir. So, untuk betul-betulkan benda-benda yang ada dekat atas ni, the GMP, polishing up the GMP, make correction towards the GMP, Currency dia ialah cognitive effort. So kalau kita tak bagi currency dia, macam mana kita nak dapat hasil? Okay. Compare to random practice. Okay, sebelum kita masuk random, kita tengok serial tu. Okay, block practice yang paling bawah. And then we go to serial practice. Where if we compare block dengan serial, block practice only practice one type of skill, one session. But in serial practice, they are going to execute more type of skill in one session. Cuma dia ada siri. Overhand, underhand, side arm. Overhand, underhand, side arm. Overhand, underhand, side arm. So for the first time you face that particular practice, you are going to get a lot of CI. Pasal tadi overhand, lepas tu underhand. Setiap perubahan skill, every change of skill being executed, cognitive effort will be used. Means you are going to get contextual interference. But along the training session, training day, the series continue within the same pattern. Jadi hari ni kena fikir, besok dah tak payah, dah tahu dah. Overhand, underhand, side arm. Overhand, underhand, side arm. Overhand, underhand, side arm. So the contextual interference start to lower accordingly to the practice day. Yang ini langsung tak ada lah. Serial awal-awal ada, but it depleted because they are pattern. So when they are pattern, you are going to use autonomous. Okay, jadi yang paling banyak contextual interference is when the practice session being planned in term of random. Overhand, underhand, overhand. Underhand, side arm. Ikut suka coach lah nak buat apa. Jadi, tadi kamu dah prepare. Okay, lepas overhand ni mesti underhand. Baru nak buat underhand, coach, side arm. We need to think on how to execute. So, if there are no pattern, meaning that for every single practice, you need to use cognitive effort. So there will be contextual interference, effect increase. Ni cara dia. Okay, this is how we plan practice session. But if the sport is a routine sport, janganlah buat random. Contoh macam sukan saya, dah tentu dia benda yang sama je dia buat. We try to have the pattern. So if you try to have the pattern, serial and random, serial and block will give you the much effect compared to random. Tapi kalau sukan kamu is an open skill, it is better to use random and then serial and finally barulah pakai block in order to polish up certain skill. Okay. So inilah cerita contextual interference. Like this. Okay. High contextual interference, random order of trial of all tasks. Low contextual interference when there are no repeated block trial. Maksudnya kita dah faham, hari ni buat benda ni je. Ini je kamu buat satu hari. Okay. So when we increase, we try to have the highest contextual interference if the sport is more towards an open skill sport. But if the sport is more towards a closed skill where you need to have a repetition, where you need to have a fluent repetition, block is better. Okay? Boleh?
Boleh Zah.
Okay. Ya. Ni. Dengar garut ni. Okay. Contextual interference and judgment about learning. Character of block practice. Kenapa kadang-kadang kita tak boleh guna block practice? Ini sama macam topik kita sebelum ni. Sometimes when you do block practice, when you keep on practicing same skill over and over and over again, you are going to notice that, oh, I'm good at this skill. Yes, because you are doing that over and over. Learner overestimate their learning. Dah dia rasa macam, aku dah bagus dekat benda ni. Tapi dia lupa, there are variation on that. Okay, so due to that, performance during practice may mislead them to judge they are learning. Okay, performance during practice mislead them because they dah overestimate. So how we want to know whether learning occurs is not by practice, but it is by test. Either retention test ataupun transfer test. Baru kita boleh cakap, okay, you are learning something. When the changes is permanent. Ni topik learning. Okay. Alright, limit of CI. Research show support for the CI effect, but also show that it does not apply to all motor skill learning. So CI tak apply pada semua motor skill learning. So the character related to the limit of the motor skill character and learner character. Maksudnya kita kena tengok atlet ni atlet mana, expert ke novice. If the athlete is novice, CI effect ni akan bagi banyak effect kat dia. So when we keep on challenging cognitively, this athlete, novice ni, they are going to learn a lot. They are going to gain more compared to expert. Dia dah expert dah. Where most of the action is autonomous. Kau suruh lah dia buat pusing macam mana pun, CI effect dia takkan tinggi lagi. Because he had already experienced all of those things. Jadi dalam proses experiencing, CI effect is one of the major factor. But if you are in the process of become autonomous, CI effect is done. Okay? Motor skill karakter tu tengok pada karakter lah. Karakter tu senang ke karakter tu susah. Kalau karakter tu terlalu susah, then you try to use random practice. At the end of the day, orang tu nak master nak master motor skill tu pun tak boleh dapat. Okay, contoh macam apa benda yang susah dalam bola, apa yang motor skill yang paling susah kamu rasa?
Contoh saya macam bagi saya kalau bagi saya paling susah heading.
Okay, heading. Pasal dia pergi tempat lain-lain ni.
Kadang saya payah nak target tu. Bola tu pakai kepala.
Kalau belajar heading, what variation of heading yang kamu boleh ada?
What variation? Apa nama dia tu?
Maksudnya, saya tak tahu sekarang kamu ni. Term yang actual saya tak pastilah. Apa okey kata forward heading contohlah
forward heading.
Kita ada apa? Kita ada bola, kita nak buat side bagi kat partner kat sebelah. Nak pass in term of heading. Okay, cuba bayangkan sekarang kita ambil 3 ke 4 lah. Pass right, pass to the right, pass to the left, heading down, and then another one we try to have a loop heading yang macam loop sikit, jauh sikit dia pergi kan. Okay, ada 4. And you see that heading is quite hard for you lah. Cuba bayangkan kita buat satu practice session. Practice session 5 minit buat satu jenis heading and we change that. Do you think you are going to get effect from the practice? Dapat heading 3-4 kali je dah kena tukar buat side pula. Ataupun baru dapat heading sekali depan, course baling yang kedua, okay, left side. Yang ketiga, right side. Yang keempat, a longer distance of heading. Lepas tu yang pertama, right side. Do you think you're going to get an accurate heading by that kind of practice?
Macam tak je tu, susah je.
Itu maksud motor skill character. If the motor skill for you is hard, it is better to use random. It is better to use block. Buat satu tu sampai dapat. Tapi kalau motor skill tu pada kamu senang, the skill is simple, it is better to get the highest CI effect by using randomize. Okay, boleh dapat?
Dapat sir.
Tu beza motor skill dengan learner lah. So not every skill we need to we need to use CI interference effect ni. Sometimes block is better, especially if the skill is hard, and especially is the learners is expert. Kalau learners novice, it is better to be random. Bagi dia CI effect yang paling besar, so that you are going to learn a lot. Tapi kalau motor skill tu simple, kalau motor skill tu susah, balik pada block. Alright, so why does the CI effect occur? Okay, these are the two reason. Okay, these are the two reason why CI effect give effect to learning. One is elaboration hypothesis. The effect is related to the elaboration of the memory representation of the skill variation that a learner is practicing. Okay, based on elaboration hypothesis, it said that when we experience a lot of variation, we need to think about that, and then you are going to get a lot of GMP variation. Okay, action plan reconstruction pula cakap high amount of CI benefit learning because the interference require a person to reconstruct an action plan. Maksudnya setiap perubahan whenever you have a variation, You need to reconstruct a new way to overcome the problem. Dengan kata lain, kena fikirlah. Setiap kali tu kamu kena fikir untuk buatkan action tu jadi. Tadi kita buat passing tegak. Suddenly coach kata, okay, buat side passing. So you need to think, where I need to kick the ball. Tu contoh paling mudah. In order to make the ball go sideways. Tak adalah bola datang je, dia pun boleh tutup mata, return balik bola. Does not have any cognitive. Okay, so elaboration said that by having variation, you are going to elaborate your GMP. Means a lot more experience will be added to you. By action plan reconstruction said that whenever we have a high CI effect practice, we need to think before we do the execution for every single action. Jadi saya kembali kepada definition pertama yang saya cakap tadi. CI effect refer to cognitive effort. As long as you give cognitive effort, you do cognitively, you train your cognitively, every single action, you are going to refine your GMP. Tapi kalau kata kita buat satu action over and over and over again without any training or whatsoever, without any cognitive effort, means that the action become autonomous. Autonomous action does not repair, does not reconstruct, does not make variation of GMP. Instead, you just load GMP yang dah ada and execute. Kalau expert, that is the way. Tapi novice, we try to have the most CI effect. Okay. Regardless of which hypothesis, two important characters have been demonstrated. Higher level of CI effect involve greater attention demand. Attentional demands, nama lain cognitive effort. Benda yang sama. People who practice according to block schedule tend to overestimate how well they are learning. Pasal dia repeat the same thing and become autonomous towards executing. So, for sure you are going to see execute dia cantik gila. Pasal dia buat benda yang sama. Now try to change the variation and then we know whether he or she can perform or not. That is transfer test. Okay. Okay, jap. Kita take 5 jap. Lepas tu kita masuk specificity lawan dia. Tadi kita cakap everything we try to have in variation. Now, they said we need to have a specific practice pula. Perkataan yang alright, practice specificity. Okay, apa maksud specificity of practice ni? Practice specificity hypothesis can be defined as test performance is directly related to the similarity between character of practice and test condition. In other words, practice specificity said that if you want to excel in competition in the test, your practice need to be specific or similar as the test can be. Sama tak dengan ayat variance tadi? Kita kena training apa dekat variance?
Tak sama ke?
Sama gila.
Oh, sama
Right? Practice specificity kata we need to practice similar practice and test. Okay. Kita tengok practice variability. Dia tak ada. Dia ke tak ada ayat ini? Skill variation that will be required in test condition. Maksudnya practice variability said that kita kena practice banyak jenis skill yang mana that skill is going to be required during test condition. While practice specificity said test performance is directly related to the similarity between character of practice and test condition. Means here, if you want to excel, katalah nak excel main bola, competition dekat AstroTurf, main malam, your practice need to be main malam dekat atas AstroTurf. Itu practice specificity. It does not see in contrast with variation. It just say that practice need to impose di competition. Kena sama. Jadi kalau kata practice pakai bola, kalau boleh lah competition tu pakai bola Adidas, practice pun pakai bola yang sama. Tu practice specificity. Practice variation said that dalam competition bola mungkin ada bola Adidas, mungkin ada bola apa tu, Joma, apa lagi bola dia? Mungkin ada bola
Puma sir, Puma.
Puma, lagi apa yang famous-famous?
Nike.
Nike, ada banyak kan?
Uh-uh.
So practice variation said that kamu kena practice semua jenis bola ni. But practice specificity said that kalau competition nanti pakai bola Nike, practice lah pakai bola Nike. Try to be specific as possible. Jangan pula orang kata competition nanti main dekat main tengah hari dekat atas padang rumput, dan kau punya practice pergi practice malam, kau fuzal. Tak ada kaitan langsung dengan game bola. Itu practice specificity. So these two concept is actually related with one another. Okay, dia bukannya berlawanan tapi dia adalah related. Agreement that the hypothesis applies to three character of the practice and test condition. Okay, practice specificity and CI effect ni tadi. Practice variation we try to have higher CI effect. So how can practice specificity help in increasing CI effect? Sedangkan practice variation, kita nak dapat CI effect, we need to practice a lot of variation. Practice specific kata kita kena specific. Okay, so under practice specificity, it give a direct relation with CI by these three character. Means in practice, we need to practice these three characteristic specific to the competition. Sensory perceptual. If the competition going to use a lot of eyes and ears, practice need to have practice of eyes and ears. Performance context. If the competition going to be, let's say, malam, going to be dekat tepi pantai, your practice need to be malam and dekat tepi pantai. And the third one, cognitive. If you are going to be, or you have the tendency to be team captain, practice to be team captain. Tu maksud practice specificity. Kena practice cognitively. Kalau tak nanti kita bila competition, we cannot make up our mind. We cannot make decision. Since we are in practice, we have a lot of time. But in competition, we have just a nick of time to make decision. Tapi kita tak pernah buat, tak pernah practice pun making decision in short period of time. So in actual condition, tak boleh. Jadi practice specificity. Okay. Konsep pertama, practice variation. We need to have CI effect. Konsep kedua, in order to supplement the effect of practice tadi, we have practice specificity. Means those variation that we try to practice need to be specific in terms of sensory between competition and game. Need to be specific in terms of performance contact, characteristic, skill executed between practice and competition. And the third one, need to be specific to the cognitive processing process between competition and practice. Ni dua konsep practice. Practice need to be variation in order to increase CI effect. At the same time, practice need to be specific to the objective. Okay, competition katalah masuk apa ni, Ironman. Okay, masuk Ironman. Berenang dekat laut. But you always practice berenang dekat dalam kolam sahaja. You never go practice dekat dalam laut. So at the end of the day, you can berenang, yes, because you practice swimming, but you cannot overcome the current since you in your practice you does not have any current, any gelombang, any arus. Tu maksud variation and specificity of practice. Okay, so that's all regarding practice, variability, and specificity. Alright. Ada soalan untuk tajuk yang ini?
Tak ada soalan sir.
Okay, kalau tak ada, kita sambung sikit lagi dekat topik ke-13. Regarding amount and distribution. Berapa banyak practice kita nak bagi dalam satu sesi, and then how we distribute the practice. Okay, ada dua je keywords kat sini nanti. Okay, so concept for amount and distribution of practice is about how much practice and the spacing. So maksud distribution ni is about resting. It's more about resting. Kita nak bagi rest panjang ke, kita nak bagi rest pendek. If the rest is panjang, what kind of practice in order to complement that? If the rest is pendek, what kind of practice? Tu yang kita akan tengok lah kat sini. Alright. So the concept for practice distribution is about overlearning. Okay. Tapi kamu kena ingat kat sini. Sekejap. Overlearning ni not applicable to all motor skill. Okay, not applicable to all motor skill. And most of the time when we consult the concept of overlearning, it is beneficial to motor skill macam word. Oh. Okay, konsep overlearning ni kita guna macam motor skill yang is more towards require, macam mana cakap dia lebih pada action yang what we call it, autonomous. We try to have an autonomous using concept overlearning. Means kita akan belajar lebih daripada sepatutnya, so that you are going to reduce the effect of attentional demand. Okay, so overlearning, continuation of practice beyond the amount needed. Maksudnya mungkin kita perlukan 2 jam je practice tu, but we go for 3 hours, we go to 4 hours. Okay, towards the executing the skill itself, so that less less what we call it, less attentional demand is needed when we try to execute the skill. Tapi dia ada jenis-jenis skill. Ni dia jenis-jenis skill dia. Okay, most effective towards procedural. Okay, most effective towards procedural. Other than that, kurang. Procedural skill quite effective by using overlearning. Contoh, macam kamu buat tadi lah. Kita buat heading. Okay, we take heading. Satu je skill, heading. So, let's say in order to get all those variation of heading, we need 3 hours, 4 hours. After 3 to 4 hours, contextual interference, dia akan reduce. So, overlearning is by extending that 3 hours. Meaning that contextual interference dah tak ada dah kat situ. You are not going to gain any more new knowledge. You're not going to gain any new variation. But, you are going to make the actual GMP tu lebih solid. Tapi tak ada variation. Maksudnya kalau kata dia ada 10 step, kamu boleh execute 10 step je. They are not going to be 11, they are not going to be 12 because no variation added. Tapi this 10 step is going to be quite a sound executed. Cantik, tepat dan sebagainya. Okay, itu konsep overlearning. Alright, sekejap apa lagi tu kan. Okay. And then, other than procedural knowledge, it is better to actually distribute the practice. Kena buat muka senyum kat situ, nanti dia buka ni. Sekejap je, sekejap Okay, saya kembali. Alright, so next concept after the overlearning concept is actually distribution. Jadi, selain daripada procedural, it is better to use distribution of practice. Okay, so the practice distribution problem. Why we need to distribute? Okay, sebelum kita distribute, why we need to distribute? Let's say you have only a specific amount of time to practice. So, ada 4 subjek. Katalah nak final exam ni kan, ada 7 subjek. ada 2 hari. So how you want to divide, or how you want to distribute these 7 subject into this. Tu konsep asal distribution of practice. Macam mana kita nak bagi? So bila kita nak bagi this, when we try to distribute this practice, there are several questions. How long? How frequent? And what about the rest? Okay, how long? How frequent? And what about the rest? Kena ingat 3 benda ni. There will be two character. There will be 2 type of distribution. So these 2 is difference in term of length, in term of frequency, and in term of rest interval. Okay. Satu kita panggil dia sebagai mass, and the second one we call it as distributed. Okay, one we call it as mass, and another one is distributed. So the difference, mass practice longer, distributed practice shorter. Mass practice less rest, distributed practice more rest. Okay, dia macam ni. Mass distributed. Okay, katalah karakter practice yang kita ada 1 day equals to 2 session, 2 hour per session. Okay, for mass it will become something like this. Itulah kita ambil Isnin. Okay, 10, 12 sesi 1, rest 12, 2, 4 sesi 2. Means for every session you are going to have 2 hour of practice. Ini mass. So distribution lawan dia. Okay, so kita ada 10, 12, and from this 10 to 12 you are going to have a shorter session, 30 minit contoh, and then rest 30 minit, rest 30 minit. Ni apa? Oh, 10 rest. So kita akan ada lagi rest 10 and then another 30 minit. These are the differences. For mass, we go for one long session of practice. But for distributed, we are going to have shorter but more frequent. Dalam satu sesi tu, sesi pagi tu, kita ada banyak distributed of practice. Tapi kalau kata mass practice, satu sesi, satu je panjang tu 2 jam. Okay, mungkinlah kat sini ada minum air 5 minit tu je, dah cukup. Okay, so for mass practice, session is longer and less rest. For distributed practice, session is shorter and more rest. Difference, more frequency, more frequent. This one is less frequency. Okay, ni asas. Okay, this is the asas between mass and distributed. Okay, now let's move on. So, take note that the inherent problem for investigating practice distribution question, no objective definition of the term. Okay. Alright. Sekejap, kita tengok kat sini. So, distribution of practice for practice session. Research show that practice session can be too long and infrequent to lead to optimal learning. Better learning result when people practice skill in more frequent and shorter practice. Okay. This is based on study being done. It said that kalau kita prone to mass practice, it lead to less optimal learning. Okay, kalau kata session tu terlalu panjang, so it is better to actually cut short the practice session. Pendekkan dia. And this is being supported by three hypotheses, and these three hypotheses is related with one another. One, fatigue hypothesis. Number two will be cognitive effort. Number three will be memory consolidation. Okay. Fatigue hypothesis said that when you are fatigued, you are lazy. Paling mudah je bahasa kampung dia. Penat, jadi malas. Malas apa? Malas berfikir. Okay. Dapat tak, Jim? First one, ni simple. Penat, malas. Malas fikir.
Dapat sir.
Okay, malas fikir. So,
Malas
bila kita cerita malas fikir, meaning that you are not going to gain any new knowledge. Why? Because there are no cognitive effort. Nampak dia jatuh yang nombor 2. Cognitive effort hypothesis. Our effort cognitively will start to reduce when our body is tired. Dia ada kaitan dengan yang pertama. And the third one, when we talk about memory consolidation, consolidation is a process of changing all those all those code into abstract that will be stored inside your mind. It takes energy in order to do so. It takes focus to do so. But when you are fatigued and cognitively you are not active, memory consolidation process will start to drop. Meaning contextual interference pun turun, you are not going to gain new knowledge. So these are the three hypotheses governing why distributed practice is better in terms of learning. Okay. And then, why there are mass practice? Kalau dah distribution tu yang paling baik, kenapa ada mass practice? It's because of type of motor skill. If the type of motor skill is discrete, it is better to use mass schedules. Because discrete skill is a skill that is clear start and end, and usually it is a simple skill to execute. Meaning that in one practice session macam ni, okay, practice session yang math macam ni, we can cram up more than one discrete skill to be trained. And how we want to get more effect by having this session in terms of random. Tapi kalau skill tu skill yang serial, or the skill is continuous, where we have continuation between one phase to another, it is better to use continuous. Kenapa? Okay. It is better to use continuous. It is better to use distributed. Simply because when the skill is too long, panjang, okay, panjang, in order for you to fully grasp how to execute the skill is hard, because you are going to lose attention in between. So you need to have some rest. And the skill need to be segregated into phase. Belajar skill tu sikit-sikit. First, katalah sesi pertama macam ni. Okay, dekat sini kita belajar dia punya setup. And then kita belajar dia punya execute. And then kita belajar dia punya follow through. And finally, we combine everything into one action. So we have rest in between that in order to get or to give your mind time to consolidate everything yang kita belajar sebelum. So this rest interval play two major role. One is to revive you, rejuvenate, revitalize in order to get your body prepare for another session. And number two, to give time for your mind, for your cognitive to do the consolidation process. Jadi kalau kat sini kita tak ada rest, means we don't have ample time to consolidate what we have learned and make a new GMP or make adjustment towards the past GMP in order to be better. Tu beza random. That is the difference between distributed and mass practice. Okay. So katalah macam bola sepak, we have a lot of skill. Okay, we have a lot of skill. Ada skill senang, ada skill susah. So if the skill is senang, usually coach akan buat macam apa nama practice ya? Dia pergi satu checkpoint. Checkpoint 1 dribble, checkpoint 2 you buat passing, checkpoint 3 you buat heading. Circuit practice, circuit training. Jadi circuit training usually required a period of time panjang. Jadi kita akan pakai mass practice. However, if you try to learn um, quite a technical skill, let's say a curveball in free kick, you try to have a curveball in free kick within different distance. So that is quite a skill. Jadi kita akan pakai distributed so that your body have time to recover between each trial, and then your mind have ample time to consolidate the new information, so they can come up with more complete and a better GMP in order for you to execute the curveball. Tu cara kita beza lah. And then when we go for maths, tadi kita kata bila practice tu terlalu lama, it become overlearning. Implement benda yang kita belajar sebelum ni, which is try to make a random sequence of action so that contextual interference will still be inflicted towards the performer. Okay. Soalan?